Colours and Forgiveness. The story so far. In episodes 1 to 4, Lucy wakes up one morning to discover a strange mist of colours swirling above her. She tells her boyfriend Tom, but decides to ignore them and hope they'll disappear. They don't, and Lucy is worried she's losing her mind. For a break, she asks Tom if they can go on a trip to the small island of Iona. She's been wanting to go there for a long time, but is unsure why. Following an argument, Lucy goes for a walk and gets lost. There's a storm approaching and she notices a small croft. Deciding to seek shelter, she encounters its inhabitant, a mysterious old man who says he's been expecting her. Episode 5. The fire was warm, and as Lucy sat on the chair pulled up to it, she felt herself relax. The stranger, who introduced himself as Fedel, began to quietly speak as he offered Lucy a hot mug of tea and a piece of the fruit bread. Sitting by the spitting fire, Lucy listened to his rumbling words and felt her eyes begin to close. "Lucy," he said, "it's time to wake up, not sleep." Lucy sat up and tried to focus on his face as he continued. A long time ago there was a young lord. He had riches and wealth, intelligence and wisdom. He was beloved of his parents, but one day he made a terrible mistake and many lives were lost, including his beloved parents. His brothers and sisters banished him from their homeland, and he spent long, hard years travelling, learning how to survive and learning to forgive himself. He became a wandering preacher, and his wise words helped many. On the day he finally died, those who held him say he left in peace and in love, but with only one deep sadness. Lucy was not sleepy now. She was absorbed in this terrible tale. "What?" she asked. Fedor looked at her, his blue eyes steady and penetrating. Lucy flushed and looked down. His brothers never forgave him. They were unable to reconcile for the rest of his life. Fedor paused. "But I think you know something of this, Lucy." She looked down at her hands gripping the mug. Her knuckles were white. She couldn't speak. "What's any of this got to do with my strange colour cloud?" she finally asked. "Oh, that," Fedor said. "That's just your spirit. It's playing up and revealing itself to you. You're so heavy with your burden. You're becoming dense, seeing things that are always there, but invisible to most. How can I make it go away?" "Just let go, Lucy, my child. This will destroy you." "If you know all this, then I guess you know what we're talking about," Lucy said. She looked like an old woman as she spoke. Fedor sighed. "Yes. You can't change their minds, Lucy." I know that. It's all over now. What on earth more can I do? If your wandering holy man couldn't change his family, I can't, can I? You just told me. He couldn't get his family to reconcile with him. He died a little sad, and it sounds like he did everything he could too. It's just my cross to bear. I just get on with it. Fedor rose up and his small figure loomed over her in the firelight. "Wrong!" he cried. "Why do you think he was sad on his deathbed?" "Because his family never forgave him for causing their parents' death, obviously," Lucy said. She looked down frustrated and wondering how on earth she got into this situation, discussing the thing she never discussed, with a total stranger. She noticed a sliver of sunshine had fallen across the rug between them. "Wrong!" Fedor cried again. "Rumpelstiltskin," Lucy said, returning to her love of the ridiculous when in a challenging moment. Fedor looked at her and shook his head. "Lucy, you can be silly or you can learn. You can keep your pain and your colours, or you can be free and live the life of happiness you were supposed to. I'm happy, Fedel, Lucy said. I have Tom. The colours aren't so great, but I was going to go and see a therapist when I got home. Okay, then we have no more to say. Fedel turned his back on her and pointed to the sky. The storm's passed. Tom will be worried for you. It's time you left. Now Lucy was confused. Why were you waiting for me? How do you know my story? Who are you? I help strangers, Fedel said. I've come to help you. I've done what I can. But you didn't tell me why he was so sad, your prince. If it wasn't because he missed his brothers. Fedel turned back to her. He walked to the door and stepped outside, and she followed. Look up, Lucy. That is your destiny. What? He couldn't forgive his brothers. What for? They hadn't got anyone killed. For not forgiving him. For not reconciling with him. Fedel, if you know my story in some strange mystical way, then you know what we're talking about. This is Cain and Abel stuff. Fedel's eyes looked so deep, so sad. Lucy felt something in her shift, just a tiny bit, and then it stopped. Yes, Lucy, but the choice is yours. And then Fedel turned around, walked back into his little croft, and firmly closed the door. Lucy stood there for a moment, wondering what on earth had just happened. The sound of a large wave hitting rock somewhere far ahead caught her attention. Well, I can think about all this later, she thought, and doing up her coat, she set off for the coast path and Tom. To be continued.